In a fully furnished, expansive room, a young girl entered clad in a white shirt, black pants, and long boots, with vibrant red hair cascading down. She wore a silver pendant, making a striking presence. As she opened the door, a scene unfolded within. The figure of a man lay on a bed, surrounded by concerned servants. Attempting to intervene, a lady servant urgently addressed her. "Lady Cecilia." Yet, impassive, she pressed forward with palpable anger. In her hand, she held a pen. Tears streaming down her face, she began striking the pen on the cloth covering the man's head, tearing it into pieces. The onlookers attempted to restrain her. In the midst of the turmoil, another lady servant implored, "My lady, please stop. You must calm down." The distressed girl, overcome with grief, screamed, "Father passed away." The gravity of the moment hung in the air as sorrow permeated the room. My father, Ilidzi Saryan, was known as a cold-blooded eccentric. He always did as he pleased and never gave a damn about conventions or what other people thought. That was the way he raised me, and that was the way he lived. Though unlike him, I was not born a man and, as such, faced discrimination at times. It was during those times that I found Father's way of life to be cumbersome, dissatisfactory even. But for the most part, I was proud of him. He walked his own path, one that he could accept. Gazing at her father's lifeless body, she questioned, "Father, is this something you've accepted as well?" Turning towards those assembled, she inquired, "Was it poison?" The doctor, standing behind her, replied, "The autopsy showed no traces of poison, Lady Cecilia." Frustrated, she retorted, "Then could it have been a curse?" Another doctor, adorned in refined attire, stated, "There is that possibility." Angrily, she questioned, "Why didn't any of you inform me of this?" The doctor, fearing her wrath, explained, "It's only a possibility. I'm afraid we're not certain." Interrupting, she erupted, "Not certain? So you will forego informing me of crucial information whenever you're not certain?" The doctor bowed his head, and she continued, "Had I not ripped the cloth to check his face, nobody would have told me about the possibility of poisoning or a curse." The doctor, now shivering, stammered, "My deepest apologies." Tearfully, she declared, "It isn't only Luzin. Everyone here is averting their gaze, trying to avoid my eyes, as though they're all aware there's something suspicious about Father's death. They're trying to hide the fact that it was not natural. We'll have the funeral at midnight. Rostov, if there's anything you need in order to find out who it was that cast the curse, be sure to secure it beforehand." A servant bowed and replied, "Yes, Lady Cecilia." She added, "Johnnon, make the necessary preparations for the funeral. He refuses to look my way as if I'm the plague, even though he's been serving our family from before I was born." Cecilia ascended the stairs accompanied by a young boy adorned in regal attire. The upper floor was illuminated with warm yellow lights. A purple-haired youth, also dressed in royal garments and wielding a sword, confronted Cecilia, questioning, "What was that back at the manor earlier? They practically made it seem like you killed your father." In response, the boy accompanying Cecilia, named Chris, retorted, "Be quiet, Chris. All your nonsense might end up ruining our liege's reputation." Chris persisted, "Oh, come on, Sophie. You saw what they were doing. Not a single one of them would meet her eyes." Mockingly, he added, "Her father just passed. You wouldn't even be that heartless to a village child." Another boy, angered by Chris's remarks, warned, "I warned you. Say goodbye to that foul mouth of yours." Concerned, Chris asked, "Wait. Are you really going to kill me?" Cecilia, laughing, remarked, "Did you think I'd let you live when all you do is bring harm to our liege?" The boy accompanying Cecilia held another guy's shirt in shock and questioned Cecilia. "You're laughing, my liege?" She replied, "It's funny. You two haven't changed, yet they have all become tense. Is there any reason for them to be tense?" As Cecilia began to depart, the boy chased after her, asking, "Do they perhaps believe you'll get rid of them all?" Pausing for a moment, Cecilia explained, "Sophia is a commoner. but she was knighted for she was one of the rarest of finds, a wizard swordsman. She is now a proper lord with an estate of her own, but she can still be naive like this. Though I find her naivete to be quite fetching. The young boy once again addressed her as my liege. Leaning against the wall, Cecilia expressed, if father was indeed killed by a curse, I'd want revenge. She added, and the wrong person might end up getting hurt in the process. That wrong person could end up being one of them. That's their foremost concern for now. Tauntingly, the purple-headed boy asked, is that why they covered his face with cloth? So you wouldn't find out? That's some loyalty right there. Another boy, irritated by his remarks, inquired, their foremost concern? Is there another reason for concern? Cecilia responded, yes. The fact that I'm a woman. The purple-headed boy persisted. What does that matter? You're the sole heir. Your father left no bastards. There shouldn't be any question about who the heir would be. Cecilia retorted, well, my relatives seem to think otherwise, and I have many of them. It was quite obvious that my father's death would be regarded as a great opportunity for them, with him leaving behind only a daughter. Reflecting on her past, she continued, I am in my early 20s. Had I not been my father's heir and entangled in inheritance matters, I'd have married long ago, with a young child in tow by now. All my relatives were outspoken in their disapproval of me marrying. Quoting one of her relatives, she recalled, we'd hardly be able to look our ancestors in the eye in the afterlife if we let some inferior blood become heir to House Saryen. Defending herself, she stated, would there not be my blood too? I failed to see the problem. Another relative argued, with all due respect, the female blood is inferior to the male. Cecilia replied, nothing we can help. God created us so. She added, if I married and my husband joined the family, he'd bear different blood from the Saryans, and a son born of such wedlock with half the blood from another family could hardly be accepted as heir. Or at least, that's what they claimed. Attempting to remain aloof from such matters, she narrated, I tried not to get involved in such matters. Meanwhile, another relative challenged her, saying, if your blood is so superior, why don't you try showing some proof of it? In response, the first relative screamed at him, and he explained, father would use such burning remarks to put down his younger brother. Cecilia disclosed, there were such men who never had the strength to speak up against my father but would rant to me about superior and inferior blood. It was clear they'd eventually come barking with all kinds of demands, so I had to prepare myself. I knew it would have never stopped at barking, and having them try to take everything that was rightfully mine would have been troublesome. Following the heated argument among relatives, Cecilia approached her father, who was seated, holding a glass of juice. In her hand, she also held a glass of juice. She suggested, you should remarry, father. It's bothersome how everybody keeps gossiping about you being without a child. It would be good to leave behind an heir. I never had a great interest in father's title or property. I didn't want to get mixed up in all that tiresome business as his potential heir. I had won plenty, and had plenty more to be won, through my own capabilities. I'd have much preferred if he'd remarried, had an heir, and stopped all those relatives talking behind his back. Her father responded, you speak as if you don't think yourself my own child. It was evident that by child, he meant a male child who could lawfully become his heir without any trouble. Nonetheless, he affirmed, holding Cecilia's hand, you are my child, Celia, and you are my only child. Addressing some boys who were following her in a hallway, Cecilia asserted that I was the only rightful heir. The boys began whispering, expressing doubt about Lady Cecilia becoming their new liege. They questioned her ability to manage the vast manor on her own, emphasizing that she was just a woman. Arriving in front of a room, Cecilia opened the door. A man in a suit inside nervously addressed her. Why, you're back, Lady Cecilia! Upon hearing the title, she corrected him. Lady Cecilia, you say? No. Pardon? Reminding the man of her father's words, she exclaimed. Celia, when I'm gone, you must take everything. She then proclaimed, I, Cecilia Z. Sarien, am the new liege and lord of this castle, raising her voice to assert her position. Cecilia pondered why she had never been interested in her father's wealth, title, or honor, considering whether societal expectations led her to unconsciously suppress her desires. Recalling her father's words, he expressed pride in her and insisted that, upon his passing, she should inherit everything. In response to her father's will, Cecilia asserted her determination to never relinquish her rightful inheritance. Holding a cup of tea, she contemplated that fulfilling her father's wishes was her duty. A servant, Johnton, approached Lady Cecilia, seeking a private conversation. Hesitant, he struggled to articulate his concerns, leading Cecilia to impatiently remind him of her imminent role as the next duke. Irritated by Gianton's continued hesitation, she firmly declared her rights to the title, order of knights, castle, and her father's library and books. Growing increasingly furious, Cecilia addressed Gianton's concerns, acknowledging his unease while emphasizing the urgency of the impending funeral. Despite her frustration, she reminded him that time was of the essence, signaling the need to focus on immediate matters. Johnton announced, He brought in a boy last year. Cecilia asked. Huh? How old? She thought. Then he was already born when I had that conversation with father. He may be a bastard, but he has father's blood. If uncle adopts him, he'll easily become the heir, and I will end up with nothing. But that's not what concerns me. I just wish father had been honest with me. Why did he tell me to take everything and make me worry about it for 4 long years? It may not be entirely official, but if he brought the boy in himself, that's as good as confirming his lineage. In that case, it's my duty to help my stranger of a brother become the rightful heir and take everything. The fight against those wolves I call relatives will only become even fiercer now. She added, Those who seek to steal the wealth and esteem my father left behind will try endlessly to come between me and my brother. And if my brother were ever to turn against me, that could become quite troublesome. It would be fine if he were to take everything else, but if he were to become greedy for the Order of Hearth Tread, that's something I won't let pass. An order of mercenary knights gathered together to protect their freedom. Guarding their liberty and keeping their contracts are worth much more to them than their own lives. And at present belongs to House Sarien. In other words, my house. The Hearth Tread is independent. The order itself would hardly choose the boy over me. I should stop thinking like this. Things haven't even begun to happen yet. Nor should they, the boy is still young. She is chasing Johnton and thinks, But why is Johnton bringing me here? Johnton said to Cecilia by opening a door. We've arrived. Cecilia thought. He may be a bastard, but he's still the Duke's son. To keep the Duke's bastard and only son in a rundown stable would be impossible unless ordered by father himself. Father, what were you thinking? If you bring in a child, then at least dress him, feed him decently, and educate him. There is no case that would warrant keeping a child in such a dump. I knew he was eccentric, heartless even to those other than me, but this is going too far. It would have been better not to bring the child here at all. Cecilia started screaming. Ethan? Ethan! Johnton said. His Grace's orders, Lady Cecilia! Cecilia got furious and said, You dare address him like that? And this is my order, address him properly. He replied. Why yes, Lady Cecilia. Lord Ethan? Lord Ethan, Cecilia said. Ethan, but why Ethan? He should have been named Ilid, after father. It's tradition to inherit the names of our forefathers, just as I inherited my name from my grandmother. Ethan. A boy came out, and Johnton said to him, My lord, if you would please come out. Cecilia looked at him and thought. Golden hair, as light as lemons, clear blue eyes with violet hues, and soft, pale skin. I know this face, she said to Johnton. Johnton, you're really in trouble now, he replied. Pardon? Cecilia said. He isn't father's bastard. With that face and that name, he must be. My liege, with the child being a boy, Does that mean you will no longer be the heir? Ceclia was writing something and saying, if Sophia knows, that means most of the servants were already aware of the child. She was grieved. All the servants are gathered surrounding her. She said, was that the reason for the cold reception today? I'm still the heir, enough so that I can fight to keep it. Both boys are standing, one said to another. How can you smile at this point? Ceclia was saying, though now I wish I had shaken father's shoulders rather than ripped the cloth off his face. She reminds, but the funeral is soon. How can I properly send him off with these feelings? Just what were you thinking, father? Don't worry if anyone questions your right as heir, my liege. Meanwhile, the purple-headed boy grasped his sword, saying, accidents happen all the time. He's screaming. Just say the word and we'll take care of it without a soul the wiser. Won't we? Another boy said. He's just a child. Ceclia stood up in anger and said, no need. She ordered the lady servant, saying, bring Ethan here. She replied, yes, my lady. The purple-headed boy got shocked and asked, Ethan? She replied, yes, the heir to Grosslin, rumored to have drowned in a lake 5 years ago. Another boy asked, why, what's wrong with the name Ethan? The purple-headed boy said, Sophie, if you're a baron, you should know a thing or two about aristocratic traditions. Aristocratic families have a tradition of passing down given names. Meaning, if the boy's name is Ethan, a son of House Saryan would have been named Ilid, not Ethan. Sophie asked, what? Does that mean I have to name my firstborn Sophia? Sophia replied, no. You would use your father's name. Sophie said, not my husband's? They're getting along well. Sophia replied, do you have a death wish? Meanwhile, the lady servant entered the room and said, announcing Lord Ethan. Sophie and Sophia are quarreling in the background. You may be a wizard swordsman, but I'm better at the sword than you. Why don't we put that to the test right now? Ceclia said, you may go. Close the door behind you. Lady servant replied, yes, Lady Ceclia. Ethan came into the room. Ceclia said, let me introduce you. Sophie and Sophia got shocked. Oh, how adorable. This is Ethan Z. Grosslin. In full anger, Chris took his sword out and started moving towards Ethan. Meanwhile, Cecilia came in front of Ethan and said, Chris, behave yourself in the presence of the Crown Prince. Chris screamed, my liege! What on earth? He added, what is the dead Crown Prince doing in your castle? Cecilia was concerned. It's little wonder why Chris is reacting this way. I could very well be tried for treason, harboring the prince here. All the past scenarios were reminded. The new king of Grosslin was crowned only last year. Before he became king, he was the Grand Duke Rafnal Z. Grosslin, brother to the former king, the Crown Prince's uncle. A decade before his crowning, the former king asked his brother to foster and educate his only son. Though the former king may have had some misgivings about his request, it was the common desire of any parent to wish for the best education for their offspring, and it was customary to ask it of the highest-ranking nobility possible. Thus, the king had entrusted his child to his brother. Crown Prince Ethan, who had been sent away to the Grand Duke's estate at the tender age of 1, returned to the palace every social season to show off his beauty and intelligence, much to the delight and admiration of all who met him. However, tragedy soon struck. The year he turned 6, after sneaking off for a swim alone, he drowned. Although his body was never recovered, the boat, as well as the bracelet found in it, were confirmed to have belonged to the Crown Prince. The king grieved, and the queen fell into despair. Her health gradually faded until she ultimately died of pneumonia the following year. It was only last year that the late king passed, which led to the crowning of Grand Duke Rafnal. However, there are those who still question the legitimacy of the new king. After all, the circumstances surrounding the young prince's death were more than suspicious, and his body was never recovered. Chris is the second son of Count Ortho, confidant to the new king and his greatest supporter. Cecilia thought. This can hardly be a welcome sight for him, Chris started saying. Jonathan says father brought him in last year. It seems he was locked up until now. Locked up? Cecilia replied. I've no idea what exactly is going on either. It seems the servants all presumed him to be my father's bastard, just as you did. She added, his disappearance at the lake was 4 years before Rafno's crowning. Father found the crown prince last year but had kept him locked up in the stables. At that time, the late king would have still been alive. So why didn't father return the prince to the palace? Cecilia protected Ethan from Chris and asked him politely. Have you not eaten yet? He was very frightened and replied, I hadn't finished eating. They dragged him here in the middle of his meal because I called for him. Cecilia thought. He seems to have no awareness that he's even the crown prince. How much must he have endured? And from such a young age. His sudden appearance may spell catastrophe for me, but he's done nothing wrong. On the contrary, he could hardly be blamed if he wanted to take revenge on me. After all, it was my father who kept him in the stables like some kind of farm animal. What can I do for this child? She hugged Ethan and then said, Well, I'm starving myself. Let's get something to eat, shall we? They both went to the dining table, where there was an array of food from steak to fruits, presented in a very decent way. Cecilia served him some sausages and said, Help yourself to some more if you'd like. Lady Cecilia's really back. In a room, Ethan sat on a dressing chair while a lady servant styled his hair. Meanwhile, another servant started saying, She's still so gorgeous. I can't believe she's a knight. She's too beautiful for that. The lady servant making Ethan's hair asked her, Do you think she'll really become the next duke? Ethan got lost in his thoughts and pondered. Then she'll be the first female to become a duke in this kingdom. When I was crown prince, there were only 4 dukes. I can't remember their names, but Saryen is entirely unfamiliar. It doesn't matter. I'm sure she just means to take advantage of and use me, just like the others. He looked at himself in the mirror and thought, I will never be taken advantage of. I will grit my teeth and pretend to remember nothing. I'll play the part of a complete, useless imbecile. Or at least that was what I promised myself. Well, I'm starving myself. He recalled how she asked him to eat something. Even though she's to be a duke, she picked me up in her arms, not caring about my filth, and treated me like a prince. No, like any other noble child. I am Ethan Z. Grosslin, Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Grosslin and heir to the throne. When I was kidnapped, I repeatedly informed the thugs of my royal status, but all it brought was violence and torture. The pain broke me. I began to act as if I knew nothing, as if I wasn't the prince. That's what they demanded of me. But on the inside, I tried my utmost not to forget who I was. Maybe she will change everything. Maybe she will help me reclaim my rightful fate. Sophie said in excitement. The food at Hearthtread Castle is always so good. I wish the food at my castle could be half as good as this. Meanwhile, Cecilia was eating her steak. She replied, A good cook costs money, your money as lord. Sophie appreciated Cecilia, saying, Yours is certainly worth every penny. Ethan thought, A female lord? Is that possible? Seeing his plate empty, Cecilia put more food on his plate. Ethan thought, She's making sure my plate is never empty. Cecilia was drinking her red juice and said, Mrs. Wells is the pride of Hearthtread. Chris asked her, I heard you pay her better than most male cooks. Is that true? Cecilia replied, I wouldn't say most male cooks. I pay her better than any cook in the world. But her hefty salary isn't the reason she continues to stay with us. Chris asked, Why then? She replied, Because father promised to take charge of Tom Wells's education. Chris got furious and started screaming. Tom Wells? You mean Mrs. Wells's firstborn son? He added, Well, they do say it's every parent's desire to have the highest-ranking nobility in charge of their child's education. But even so, they're commoners. Sophie made fun of him, saying, "Your father truly was a gourmet." Chris said, "He was more than just a connoisseur of food. He was a connoisseur of wine, women, war, power, knowledge, gambling, and even politics." Ethan thought, "Here, there's a female duke to be, a female lord, an education for a commoner for the sake of good food? How is any of this possible? The man who brought me here never once came to see me after he locked me up. He didn't tell me his name, what he wanted from me, nor did he try to convince me or spy on me." Now, he was heading towards his room. "He gave me shelter and just enough food to keep me alive and then did absolutely nothing. If that was his plan from the start, why did he bring me here at all? I was sold off and bought again and again, like some item." He laid on the bed and started crying. There had to have been a reason for it all. But why didn't anyone bring me to my father if they knew I was the crown prince? Wouldn't that have resulted in the greatest prize? The greatest honor? Father, mother, uncle, Aunt Dash. A sound came from the window. I'm sure I heard something coming from the window. He got frightened, opened the window, and saw Cecilia. When Ethan opened the window, he observed Cecilia outside. Shocked by her unexpected presence, he questioned why she was at the window. Cecilia, visibly embarrassed, responded, "Ah, you're awake?" as she entered the room through the window, stating, "I'm here because I'd like to have an audience with you." Ethan, perplexed, inquired, "What do you?" only to be interrupted by Cecilia, who addressed him as "Your Highness," and asked, "How much of your true self do you remember?" Ethan, unable to comprehend her question, requested clarification. "Pardon? I don't understand." Internally, Ethan reflected, "I never thought she'd ask that straight out. This is a matter of life or death for me. Does she really think I'd answer so easily? Is she even aware of how brutally I was treated because of my status?" Overwhelmed with grief, he clenched his hand while tears streamed down his face. Cecilia continued, expressing regret, "Your Highness, I'm deeply sorry to tell you this, but Her Majesty the Queen passed away the year following your accident due to grave illness." Adding another blow, she disclosed, "And His Majesty the King followed her just last year. Father and mother." Ethan, astonished, exclaimed, "What?" As Cecilia confirmed their deaths, Ethan's world crumbled. He thought to himself, "Dead?" Struggling to contain his emotions, he resisted the urge to cry, realizing that it would be an admission of everything. Despite his inner turmoil, he held on to his shirt, thinking, "My heart is breaking." In a moment of weakness, he lost his balance and stammered. Meanwhile, Cecilia, understanding his pain, held him in her arms. He wept profusely, expressing, "I always thought I'd see them again," adding, "I always held on to the hope that I'd return to my parents and escape from all this pain. Had I known that this was what was waiting for me, I'd have sooner died." Cecilia, holding him, offered solace, saying, "Your Highness, you tried to hide your true identity from me just now. Was it not in order to save your own life? Your parents may have passed on, but that doesn't mean you no longer have a reason to live." Advising him, she continued, "You must be stronger. If you die now—" Ethan, in his thoughts, reflected, "It'd be nothing more than the death of a cur." He continued crying, and Cecilia thought, "How insolent! Then tell me, who sits on the throne now?" She indulged in her own thoughts, revealing, "As of now, the former Grand Duke Rafnal is the king." Ethan reminisced about his uncle and aunt who raised him, thinking, "My uncle and aunt, they were always so kind to me." He remembered how his uncle's estate was a place of freedom, contrasting it with the duties and constraints at the palace. Recalling a specific moment, he remembered his uncle's words. "Ethan, come here. I understand, it's natural to be curious about everything at your age. I only ask that you stay out of danger, Ethan. All right?" Reflecting on their kindness, he thought, "My aunt and uncle must have grieved so much when I disappeared." He considered the possibility that they wished for his return more than his own parents. Cecilia, addressing him as Your Highness, bowed on her knees, introducing herself as Cecilia Saryan of Hearthtread, and swore to serve him faithfully. Ethan, skeptical, questioned, "You are on my side, then?" She affirmed, "Yes, Your Highness," prompting Ethan to think, "But she too will prove to be a liar." Ethan then requested, "Return me to the throne," adding, "Then I will use everything in my power as the rightful heir to support you. I will have my revenge on all those who made me and my parents suffer." It was a dark night, and near the sea, the funeral of Cecilia's father was underway. His lifeless body adorned with flowers, a person standing near his head recited, "Ilidzi Saryan 14, a most learned pupil and literary savant, a philosopher with eloquence that could edify the devil himself, and a knight most powerful and righteous, has entered his eternal sleep this night. O Creator, we pray thee to split the moonlight and accept this follower who is returning to thy embrace." The man recited these words from a book he held in his hand. As Cecilia stood there in a long black coat, holding a lantern, her father's body lay in a boat filled with flowers. The man continued, "We pray thee, O Creator, open the moonlight and embrace our dead." Cecilia, overwhelmed with grief, thought, "This is the last time I'll ever see father, isn't it? His face, his voice. I'll never get to see or hear him again." She recalled a conversation with her father when he held her hand and said, "Cilia." Reflecting on her emotions, she thought, "Just a single teardrop could give them the opportunity to brand me a weak-minded female and undermine my power. I can't betray even a sliver of weakness. Isn't that right, father?" A voice called out, "My liege," and Sophie, standing behind her, addressed her. Cecilia turned around and asked, "Ah, Sophie, how are things within the order?" Sophie bowed his head and replied, "Just as always. There is no cause for concern." Expressing genuine concern, he added, "More importantly, are you all right, my liege? You seem to be quite concerned about him," Cecilia stated. Sophie, respectful, replied, "My liege, I am merely devoted to your well-being." Reflecting on her thoughts, Cecilia questioned, "Sophie, I wonder, would it have been better if he were my father's bastard?" She recalled a conversation with Ethan, where he pleaded, "Return me to the throne. I'm well aware since my uncle has been crowned that I am now farther away from the throne. However, as the original, legitimate heir, I will use everything in my power as the rightful heir." Bowing her head, Cecilia pledged, "To support you. It would be more than I deserve, Your Highness." Ethan, in agreement, replied, "I leave it to you, Sir Hearthtread. We're in the same boat now." In contemplation, Cecilia thought, "If he were my younger brother, I could simply hand over everything father left me and leave it at that. But this isn't a simple matter of inheritance. I can hardly turn away now. If it had been me rumored to have drowned in that lake." Returning to the castle with Chris and Sophie, she mused, "Father would have drained the lake of every last drop of water to find my body. So why didn't the late king spare even half the effort? His only son was announced dead under suspicious circumstances. Was he that trusting of his brother?" Recalling the moment when her father advised her to study politics, Cecilia continued to ponder the intricate dynamics surrounding the throne and her family's fate. Her father once said to her, "Cilia, you need to learn about politics." In response, she asserted, "I already know enough, father." However, she pondered, "Yet he never got around to teaching me much about it. If he truly believed it was a necessity." The next day, her father brought 3 teachers for her, announcing, "Say hello to your tutors." Each introduced themselves, one in charge of accounting, another of economics, and the last of culture. Cecilia reflected, "He would have done anything to instill that knowledge in me. But instead, he chose to raise me as a knight." In the library, Chris expressed his amazement, saying to Cecilia, "That was terrifying. I've never seen an 11-year-old with such ambition in their eyes." Cecilia remarked, "His tutors certainly appreciate it. They all adore him." Sophie, standing by the window, added, "I like him too. He's poised and gentle." Chris, however, dismissed Ethan's qualities, stating, "He's just a pretty kid. And of course, he's gentle with everyone. He was treated like a slave until just a few days ago. If he starts acting all snooty and lands himself back in his old position, especially after being a guest of our liege, he'd never be able to manage it." This ignited an argument between Chris and Sophie, both expressing their perspectives passionately. Chris screamed, "My liege! I'm telling you, that boy is going to wreak havoc upon us all. Let's say he really doesn't remember who he is right now, but he might. Someday. Just imagine what kind of bloodbath there will be when that happens. Even if he himself doesn't wish for it, those around him will never leave him be. You need to make a decision, my liege." Sophie intervened, expressing concern for Ethan's life. "Hold on. You don't intend to murder that poor child, do you? He may have lost his place in the succession, but that doesn't mean he no longer deserves to live. He should at the very least reclaim his former life as the prince. It's what is fair." Chris, however, argued against this view, emphasizing the potential consequences of Ethan's presence. The heated debate was interrupted by a person in royal attire who admonished them, saying, "I didn't realize you two were in any position to order our liege around, you worthless maggots." During a heated argument between Sophia and Chris, Leon intervened with a stern tone, exclaiming, "You worthless maggots!" He inquired about the commotion, questioning, "Now tell me, what is the meaning of all this ruckus in front of our lord and liege?" Startled, Sophia and Chris stammered in response. "We were WL, you see," silently pleading for their liege's assistance. Leon, noticing Cecilia's absence, exclaimed, "She's gone?" as Sophia and Chris turned in disbelief. Leon, furious, shouted, "Stand up straight, you bastards!" Their thoughts echoed, "My liege! How could you abandon us like this?" Tearfully, they complied, saying, "Yes, sir." Cecilia, apologizing and disregarding the chaos, murmured, "Sorry," thinking, "But Leon would have berated me as well." Leon, protective, commanded, "Don't allow them to be insolent toward you." Ignoring the admonition, Cecilia moved forward, thinking, "No need to waste time with that. Not when I have someone I need to see." Ethan, at a serene pond with its ocean blue water and surrounded by bushes, emerged and remarked, "It's strange." Cecilia, offering a piece of cloth, replied, "Even after all I went through after that incident at the lake, I still love to swim. I still love the water." Cecilia explained, "Well, people born with magical powers are naturally drawn to water," adding, "It's the easiest form to control. Many learn to control their powers with water when swimming." Ethan, surprised, asked, "Magic powers?" To which Cecilia reassured, "It's all right. You don't have to hide it, Your Highness. Those with powers can easily recognize each other." Ethan, becoming furious, screamed, "You mean I have magical powers?" Cecilia, maintaining composure, asked politely, Did you not know?" She calmly explained, "Magic is something you're born with. As it's inherent, it's detectable from the moment of birth." Continuing her explanation, she elaborated, "Thus, when a child is born into an aristocratic family, a priest is called for to test if the child has powers." Inwardly, she reflected, to have a magically gifted child born into the family was equivalent to amassing a great fortune. Cecilia highlighted the advantages. Those with powers had a higher probability of being knighted through their own merit, as well as contributing greatly to their house. Expressing confusion, she thought, "It doesn't make any sense, then, that the crown prince would have been kept in the dark about his own powers." She acknowledged the possibility for commoners like Sophia, stating, "Of course, if a child were born a commoner like Sophia, it could take time for their powers to be recognized." Contemplating further, she suggested an alternative. Unless they were acquired sometime after birth. As a reminder, Cecilia added, "Although quite rare, there have been cases where people obtain magic powers after birth. Such people are gifted with magic infinitely stronger than those born with it. They are called the Chosen Ones and are considered cherished by the Creator. There have only been 2 known Chosen Ones. One died of old age last year, and the other is rumored to have gone into seclusion after transcending the limits of human power. Cecilia pondered. If the Crown Prince himself is a possessor of such rare power, there'd be no question as to how much the anti-royalists would want to get their hands on him. Ethan, in disbelief, asked, "You're saying I can wield magic?" As she dried his hair, Cecilia calmly responded, "You have the capacity for it." Covering him with a cloth, she continued, "But you need skill to make use of it." Determined, Ethan exclaimed, "Then I shall learn." Cecilia cautioned, "It's not difficult to control one's magical power," adding, "But the training process can be rather painful." Overwhelmed with emotions, Ethan hugged her, saying, "It's fine. Please." Cecilia resumed wiping his head, stating, "Very well. I'll start looking for a suitable wizard tutor," and reminded, "Make sure to always dry off after a swim." Grateful, Ethan replied, "Thank you. I'll do my best." Observing her smile, he thought, "I've never seen her smile like that before." Realizing, "She's so good to me." As Cecilia returned to the castle, a servant named Ross informed her of the winter conditions. He nervously mentioned, "No one died of hunger or cold last winter, so it was a blessing. The last few winters have not been so harsh." Cecilia reflected, "Meaning when my father was lord, the people were well provided for each winter." Inquiring about the current winter, she asked, "And this winter?" Ross hesitated, replying, "It appears that the cold will be quite harsh. Sophia and Chris interrupted, stating, "Well, of course, father. It's winter. It's quite natural to be cold." Chris added, "Do you understand what we're saying?" Sophia menacingly asked, "Or should we carve out that tongue of yours?" Ross stammered an apology. Pardon?" Cecilia, in a commanding tone, exclaimed, "Silence." Ross, tearfully pointing at Sophia and Chris, claimed, "My lady! These insolent bastards dared to threaten Cecilia cut him off, saying, "Ross, it's your grace, not my lady." Confused, Ross said, "Pardon, my lady?" Cecilia clarified, "You may have once been my tutor and master, but I am now the lord of this castle." Emphasizing her authority, she added, "And you are being insolent to your lord and liege." Sternly, she asked, "Do you understand, Ross?" Bowing his head, Ross replied, "Why yes, yes, your grace." As Cecilia sat on a study table, she directed, "We have nothing more to discuss concerning the winter preparations. You may leave now." Ross, begrudgingly, responded, "Yes, your grace." Furious, he thought while leaving, "How dare a mere woman treat me like this?" On a bright sunny day, Sophia took Ethan for swordplay training. She said to Ethan, "Starting today, I, Sophia Zihayan, will be your sword instructor." Laughing, he responded, "We will begin with the basics, so if it's too difficult, well, try and keep up anyway." Ethan recalled how Cecilia took care of him, providing a tutor named Avid for magic and math. Sophia, a skilled wizard swordsman, became his swordsmanship tutor. Reflecting on how swordsmanship and magic alone would help him, Ethan thought, "Mastering swordsmanship and magic alone will equip me with enough strength to protect myself and ensure no one can ever take advantage of me again." Sophia, shocked by Ethan's apparent weakness, asked, What the ? How can you be so weak? Are you made of slime?" Ethan sat on the ground, and Sophia advised, "You must get stronger," adding, "My liege Cecilia could conquer a gladiator in the Colosseum by the age of 13. Ethan, skeptical, retorted, "You're lying. Do you think you can fool me?" Sophia screamed, "It's the truth." Scratching his head, Ethan admitted, "Well, not that I saw it with my own 2 eyes. I wasn't a member of Hearthtread yet at the time." He added, "But she did become the liege of our order at only 20, and was trained in holy swordsmanship from a very young age, gifted as she was with strong magical and divine powers." Shocked, Ethan thought. Extraordinary in every right, and asked, You mean Sir Hearthtread is a holy swordsman? Sophia, pleased he finally believed her, said, She is indeed, adding, You're only 11 yet, so if you train hard starting now, by the TI, huh? Ethan ran out, and while chasing him, Sophia screamed, Hey! Where'd he go? He started crying, saying, First my liege and now this boy? Is this some cruel joke? Ethan approached Cecilia, who was adorned in a beautiful white top and a pendant. She asked him, Sir Hearthtread, Your Highness? Aren't you supposed to be having your lesson? Ethan, panting, asked, What are you doing here? He expressed his desire to become a holy swordsman like her, stating, You're a holy swordsman? I want to be one too. Deeply inspired by her, he thought, No, it's more than that. I want to be you. Chris interrupted, shouting, What utter nonsense! Cecilia ordered Chris and Sophia, Go and wait for me at the Hearthtread fortress. They both bowed and said, Yes, my liege. Cecilia invited Ethan for a walk, and in the scorching sun, her hair shone bright. Ethan, chasing after her, revealed what Avid told him about his rare and strong magical powers. Cecilia confirmed, Yes, so I've heard. Ethan asked, Doesn't that mean I can be a holy swordsman too? Cecilia, making a victory sign, explained, A holy swordsman must be equipped with two powers, magical power and divine force. If you're gifted with only divine force, you cannot become a swordsman. On the other hand, if you're born with only magical power, you cannot use holy force. Only when you've been born with both powers can you become a holy swordsman. Ethan, frustrated, exclaimed, But that means it's all decided at birth. He screamed, That no matter how hard I try, I cannot become one. Cecilia regretfully affirmed, As regrettable as that is, that's correct. Ethan asked, Then, what must I do? Cecilia, not understanding, asked, Pardon? Ethan yelled, What must I do in order to protect myself? Overwhelmed with envy, he thought, I'm the crown prince, and yet I can barely manage to survive. You are the only heir of the Sarians, Grand Master of an order of knights, and a holy swordsman. He continued, Mine is a path that reeks with the stench of blood. I would not be so quick to choose it. Mentioning the loss of his parents, he said, Both my parents are gone. Grieving, he added, I hardly have the freedom to pick and choose. Ethan asked Cecilia, Sir Hearthtread, you too would do anything to respect your late father's will, wouldn't you? Cecilia replied, Of course. It is my duty as his daughter to do my utmost to respect his wishes. She acknowledged the challenge of knowing his exact wishes and expressed hope that it wouldn't be misunderstood. Advising Ethan to return, she mentioned Sophia waiting for him. Ethan thought, Why are your eyes so sad? He went to Sophia, expressing concern about running off. Inwardly, he pondered Cecilia's unanswered question. What must I do in order to protect myself? Mine is a path that reeks with the stench of blood. I would not be so quick to choose it. He wondered about Cecilia's words regarding the path of a holy swordsman, considering it should be glorious. However, he was puzzled by her negative portrayal of it. In a different scene, a queen sat on a royal sofa, dressed in maroon and black, holding a matching hand fan. She remarked, Oh dear, is that so? If he ever found out, he'd be enraged at such insolence. Her son, sitting in front of her, replied, You can't tell anyone, mother. This is just between you and me, she assured. Why? Of course I won't, dear. Sophia went to Ethan and told him to take notes. Take note, Your Highness! That is an example of perfect posture and a perfect swing. Ethan, holding a sword, attempted to practice. Sophia added, You, on the other hand, Your Highness, have neither. Cecilia stood beside Ethan, also armed. Ethan wondered, Must she continue to tease me like this? Sophia thought, Especially in front of Celia. Was that another wobble I saw? Ethan looked at her and thought. Her swing is admittedly tranquil and graceful. She warned me that the path of a swordsman is one stained in blood, but I can't imagine that being the case for her at all. Sophia, as Ethan's supervisor, initiated applause, exclaiming, "Attention, attention!" While Ethan held a sword, he and Cecilia attacked a wooden piece. Sophia advised Ethan, "It's been 9 weeks since my training started. Celia often joins me during my classes, going over the basics." Cecilia elegantly cut the wood. Ethan thought, and when she, a grandmaster and holy swordsman, is practicing the basics so diligently right beside me, adding, "I've no choice but to work harder." Sophia interrupted him, saying, "No! Your balance is broken. Keep your back straight. Like this." Ethan, feeling frustrated, thought, "Ugh! I'd rather learn from Celia, not Sophia. But Celia never says a word during my lessons. Not about my posture, my swinging, or anything." As Sophia and Cecilia conversed, Ethan felt left out, pondering. Is it because I'm too awful to warrant a comment? Still, I wish she'd say something. Maybe tell me I'm good for a beginner, or that I need more work, or just anything. Trying to gain attention, he moved his head around, acknowledging, "I'm acting as if I'm hungry for attention from Celia." Upon returning to the castle, Ethan massaged his arm, reflecting, "I'm feeling much better than I did weeks ago. All my scratches and sores have healed, but my swordsmanship is hardly improving." Concerned, he wondered, "Will I ever get stronger at this rate?" and expressed gratitude, saying, "Thank you, Celia." Cecilia, standing in front of him, responded as Ethan called her. "Yes, Your Highness?" he exclaimed. "I want to learn sword fighting." "But not from Sophia, from you," Cecilia suggested. "Sophia is a wonderful teacher. Why don't you try learning from her for a bit longer?" Ethan insisted. "No, I want to see you use a sword. You can show me some moves, at least." She agreed, replying, "Very well then." She added, "I'll let you know when I have your new schedule ready." Ethan felt happy upon hearing this. While having a meal, he thought, "I'm certain she'll be a better teacher than Sophia." A servant serving him food misinterpreted something, prompting her to ask, "Pardon me." Ethan, engrossed in his thoughts, envisioned improvement in no time. Observing the delicious-looking gravy with chicken pieces, he asked, "What's this?" Meanwhile, he found a note in his pants pocket, wondering, "It's not from Celia. Who is it from then? Who would send me a note? I shouldn't rouse any suspicion. I need to act normal for now." A royal letter was written. "Your Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, how you must be suffering in such an isolated castle. This old servant's heart is breaking. I, Woodson, and 8 others have formed a secret society to put into action what God has decreed. So when your mind is made up, please alert the maid who passed on this note. If you give us a date and time, we shall gather then at the folly in the southeast corner of the Hearthtread grounds. We only pray that you may return to the capital with all speed and claim your rightful place on the throne." This letter was received by Ethan. He was learning it. From the Society of 8 Woodson, Rassfield, Rosen, Lewid, Iron, Sawyer, Sienna, Blanyet. After reading it, he thought, "Is this saying I can return to the palace right away? That I can once again become the crown prince? Even though uncle is king? If uncle legally adopts me, it wouldn't be impossible. Hold on. How do these people know me? I thought the only people who know I'm alive are those working here. Whatever the case, I can't ignore this note. If Celia finds out about this, she'll detain me. And if she decides to do so, there will be nothing I can do about it." He added, "Nothing I can do? Is the only reason she's been so good to me, to hold me hostage?" Ethan was going into his room, while Cecilia was also leaving the dining room. Ethan thought, "It is rather strange. I've been here for quite a while, but she still hasn't taken me to the palace. There's not even been any mention of sending correspondence to my uncle. Does she have no intention of letting me go? What if she's only being nice to me until I let my guard down in order to take advantage of me? It's only because of my legitimate blood that she's keeping me alive. He's in utter grief, holding his chest while thinking. It's for the best. It was always my intention to return to the palace. If I use this note, I can turn this situation around to my advantage. It had been a good day until a few hours ago. Ethan, in an elegant green suit, hurried towards Cecilia, addressing her as Celia. She responded with, "Your Highness," and inquired, "What's the matter?" Ethan requested the promised lesson urgently, emphasizing its importance to him. Cecilia, understanding his concern, said, "I see. All right, then I'll meet you tonight." Surprising Ethan. He sought confirmation. "Do you mean it?" As Cecilia left, Ethan reminded her, "You mustn't forget." And she thought he seemed happy. Later that night, in the castle's backyard, Cecilia asked her servant to fetch a sword from the vault. The servant complied, and Cecilia reflected. It had been an especially fine day. Yet now, as she faced 4 or 5 veiled men, one shouted, "Who dares to approach?" Cecilia identified herself as the liege of the fortress, and they recognized her as Cecilia, the holy swordsman, threatening her with, "Prepare yourselves!" They started moving towards her. Cecilia thought, "It doesn't seem like Ethan has made it here yet. This situation will only get worse if he shows up. I need to take care of everything before that happens." As they shouted and rushed towards her, exclaiming, "Everyone, together! Kill her!" Cecilia drew her sword and engaged in combat. Swiftly, she incapacitated one of them, albeit at the cost of staining her white pants with blood. Reflecting on the situation, she thought, "Just as my father." Examining the fallen opponent, she mused, "Looks like I killed someone who had something more to say." Seated, she heard a noise and pondered, "Who's there?" Spotting someone behind a pillar, recognizing the shoes, she realized, "Those shoes. Ethan?" Wondering how long he had been there, she noted, "I'm sure he can tell by sounds alone that the fight is over. The fact that he hasn't come out yet means—" Ethan, frightened and in tears, covered his mouth. Cecilia empathetically thought, "He's been through so much already. I shouldn't be offended he's tried to use me this way." Touching her sword, she contemplated, "It's only because he has a lot to think through, all on his own." Despite feeling pity and sympathy, Cecilia acknowledged. Still, recognizing her soft spot for the young prince, she leaned her sword against the stairs and began to leave. Observing her departure, Ethan saw that she's going. Ethan marveled. She took care of all of them in a matter of seconds. She's terrifying. Determined to return to his chambers, he noticed a sword by the stairs, prompting him to think, "What's this?" as he held it in his hands. Meanwhile, Cecilia contemplated the inevitable revelation of Ethan's existence to the palace, acknowledging, "The palace was bound to catch wind of Ethan's existence sooner or later. He's the crown prince who's come back from the dead, after all." She recognized the sensitive nature of this information and pondered the challenge of keeping it a secret. "It wouldn't have mattered how much I tried to keep it a secret. That's information both the royalists and anti-royalists would sell their souls for," she added, realizing that only a select few were aware of Ethan's existence, most of whom she trusted. She regretted, "I shouldn't have let my guard down. Should I check everyone who knows about Ethan and trace back their actions? All this only makes my heart grow heavier." Determined to gather information, she headed to the library where Sophia awaited. Sophia addressed Cecilia as "my liege," and presented a letter, revealing, "We found a pass to Yen's son on one of the bodies from yesterday." Cecilia, reading the pass, commented, "This is to be expected if they came from the capital," and inquired further. Chris joined the conversation, sharing that the pass was issued in the name of Baron Hostino, a close friend of the captain of the guards. Explaining their connection, he revealed, "My brother attended the Royal Academy with them." Cecilia deduced, "Then it had to have been King Rafnal who sent them," emphasizing the urgency to act. After carefully reading the letter, she declared, "We need to move now," leaving them to contemplate the possible leaker of Ethan's information. Cecilia concluded, "This means the one who leaked the information on Ethan would have been," and decisively stated, "We're departing by ship tonight." In the library, Cecilia addressed Chris and Sophia with a firm decision. "I'm leaving by boat tonight," she instructed Sophia. "Sophia, get the ship ready. I leave everything to you." Sophia and Chris were shocked. Chris exclaimed, "My lord, then I should." But Cecilia cut him off, saying, "Chris, you're out of this." Chris, bewildered, shouted, "My lord! What are you talking about?" Sophia queried Cecilia. "My lord, why did you suddenly exclude Clays from this job?" Cecilia explained, "Chris is the person who revealed the existence of the Crown Prince." She continued, "I also have close contacts who informed me about recent events." Their astonishment left them speechless. Cecilia elaborated, "I heard Countess Orso say, His Majesty may not be able to hunt at the palace this year." Sophia doubted Chris's involvement, but Cecilia quoted the Countess. "His Majesty is so busy with a pesky job that he doesn't know if he can afford to hunt." Placing her hand on the table, Cecilia asked, "Who do you think she was talking about?" She speculated, "Maybe she wasn't talking about the situation we were hissing at." She recalled the scenario from last night when a few men came to her for a fight. She discovered that one of them was Chris. However, it was too much of a coincidence to just let it go a cancelled hunting festival due to sudden intruders. At first, she wasn't sure who the person that revealed it was. Then, she explained how she found out, saying, "I came to know about it because your reactions made it clear." Upon hearing this, Chris began defending himself, stating, "My lord, I'm just—" Cecilia interrupted him, acknowledging, "Yes, you were just being loyal to your family. I know. It's just a matter of conflict in this case. In the event of a conflict between your house and Hastard's interests, you can betray Hastard anytime." She expressed deep disappointment in Chris, saying, "Just like now." Sophia questioned him. "Chris, did you really leak information?" Chris responded, "Sophia." Sophia, furious, attacked him, holding his collar, and demanded, "Did you really sell the Crown Prince's future?" Chris admitted, "That's right." While witnessing their confrontation, Cecilia intervened, commanding, "Stop." She asked Chris, "Do you have any excuses?" He sat down, bowed his head in front of her, and replied, "No, I don't. I betrayed Hastard," she affirmed. "Yes. Take responsibility for what you did." Chris agreed and left, saying, "Yes, my lord." Sophia called out to Cecilia, "My lord," and began supporting Chris, stating, "Chris is a loyal knight." He added, "Although this time, I think he made a mistake because he had strong loyalty to his family." He requested, "So please, just this once." Cecilia replied, "Sophia, and don't tell this to Leon. I'm getting tired." Sophia inquired, "Are you forgiving Chris then?" Cecilia responded, "Chris thought Eden would be a predicament for us, so he just brought it up to his family instead, as he was worried about us." She explained, "Of course, he also wanted to relieve his inferiority complex. Anyway, he will be jolly again after a few days of being sullen, but stay still." She emphasized, "Leon is different from me, so he will try to expel him." Sophia agreed, saying, "Of course, yes, Lord." He added, "But these days, you are not getting along with His Highness. His Highness is also very upset." Cecilia, shocked, sought confirmation. "Really?" Sophia confirmed. "Yes, he brought me a great child's sword." "Isn't that a gift from the Lord?" She started thinking, "Can I describe it as a gift?" Cecilia clarified, "It wasn't a gift. It's my old sword, so it's not exactly a gift." Sophia exclaimed, "It's such a good sword, so how can you say it's not a gift even if it's not new?" He added, "It's still a great gift because it's still sharp." Then why did His Highness say he doesn't know? Cecilia replied. Well, from his point of view, it's kind of vague to call it a gift. While leaving, she said, Anyway, before you go to catch them, we'll go to Jensen first. Sophia replied. Yes, sir. Cecilia thought. Before I deal with it quietly, I should make the Crown Prince stand out and say that he is alive. She went upstairs, where all the lights were illuminated. She found Ethan wearing a royal blue suit, holding a sword. Cecilia greeted him. Your Highness, and asked politely, Was Haster not to your liking? She held his cheeks with affection. Ethan replied, No, it was comfortable. Cecilia put her hand on his face and remarked, You look tired. It will be hard for you on the ship. He reassured her. It's okay. I don't get seasick, Cecilia said. You'll get your rightful seat back now. Ethan agreed. Yeah, and held her hand, saying, You know, silly. Cecilia encouraged him to continue. Yes, please go ahead. Ethan expressed gratitude. I don't know what kind of person you are, but you were the first one who was nice to me without any ulterior motive. Thank you, he added, and I'm sorry. Cecilia returned his sword, saying, Please take back this sword. Ethan replied, For me, this sword is just too good. This sword will be wasted on someone like me. As he left, he mentioned, So I'll be on the boat first. While heading towards the boat, the royal guard stopped them, threatening, Stop this instant. If you come closer, we will regard you as someone who is against the royal authority. They dragged Ethan towards them, and Cecilia, attempting to protect him, was halted by guards with swords. Ethan screamed, Silly! As Ethan approached the boat, royal authorities apprehended him, leading to his arrest and confinement in jail. Get in! They demanded. Ethan urgently pleaded. Wait! Allow me to see my uncle, no, His Majesty! Confused, he questioned. What's going on? An intrusive thought crossed his mind. Did Cecilia deceive me? He insisted. No, Cecilia is not the kind of person who would do such a thing. I saw it with my own eyes. Clenching his fists, Ethan pondered. If my uncle had been looking for me, he would have brought me here so we could face each other. He added, If he saw my face, he'd know that I am alive. What if my uncle... Meanwhile, when the royal authorities arrested Ethan, Sophia exclaimed, My lord, what shall we do now? Chasing Cecilia in the castle lobby, Ethan voiced his disbelief. I never thought he'd act like this. Cecilia considered. The palace's reaction and response were definitely quicker than expected, as if they were aware of it. Determined to find the truth, she asserted. This wasn't done by Chris. Puzzled, she questioned. Then who? Cecilia reassured Sophia. Calm down. It's not like I didn't see this coming. Sophia asked. Then who would do it? Cecilia realized. The handmaiden probably tipped off High Priest Rasnathif about Ethan. Afterward, she added, Word of the Crown Prince should have reached Rasnathif's ears by now. Emphasizing the risk, Cecilia stated, As a half-royalist, there's no way she'd miss the Crown Prince. And if the anti-royalist line that follows her learns of it, and makes a ruckus indiscreetly. Convinced, Cecilia declared, His Majesty will call for me, even if we stand still. In a lavishly furnished room, the king summoned Cecilia, elegantly seated in royal attire with a cup of tea. Cecilia, donning black and white attire, sat before him. Setting his cup down, the king inquired, I can't help but ask why you did that. He questioned, Are you going to turn against me? Cecilia assured, No, your majesty. Smiling, the king remarked, Even if Hastert is a duke, it's only a single title. And asked, Do you think it will be difficult for me to forfeit it? Cecilia replied, No, your majesty. As she laughed, the king, irritated, warned, Don't laugh, even if it's just a jeer. He pressed, But why did you dare strike me in the back of the head? Cecilia explained, How could I do that to you, your majesty? Making her point, she said. But with all due respect, Hastert is free, and I am free as its master. The king, furious, queried. Excuse me? Cecilia clarified. With all due respect, Hastert has changed its owner. Pointing to herself, she declared. His Majesty has no contract with the new owner me? He asked incredulously. This means that there is no contract between me and your Majesty, no relationship at all? Feeling he wasn't taking her seriously, Cecilia asked. Ha, are you trying to make fun of me? She added. Your Majesty, you can change the owner of the Duke of Hastert's title. Confidently, she asserted. However, the owner of the Knights of Hastert is me. Convinced, she stated. His Majesty may change the owner of a title, but he cannot change the owner of the order. The king thought. Hastert is a formidable knighthood. It's very expensive, to say the least. Acknowledging, he noted. I know you were always weighing the best deal between me and my relatives. Adding, he said, of course, you would covet this powerful order. Surely you will not be able to refuse my offer. The king addressed Cecilia, saying, Cecilia Saryen. He expressed, I respect Hastert. If Hastert considers you to be their master, of course, I will recognize that as well. Adding, he stated, but it seems that Hastert and I have a disagreement over who should be the head of the household. Cecilia responded firmly. I am Hastert, so there can't be a difference of opinion. If you think there is a difference of opinion, I can show you the differences between me and the group claiming to be Hastert. Offering a way forward, she said, if you wish to do so. The king, furious, exclaimed, I'm offended. How dare you have the audacity to say in front of me that you can have a contract with other countries? Cecilia promptly apologized, saying, I apologize, I thought we were just talking about possibilities. He questioned, have you really thought of someone else sitting in Hastert's chair? Cecilia remained silent. The king laughed and remarked, No, I was just thinking about the possibilities. Explaining his perspective, he said, Who would I consider to be the master of Hastert if it wasn't you? Me and Ilid's friendship isn't exactly rocky. He continued, But you're a woman and you're young, and it's true that there were mixed feelings about making you the duke. Even I can't be called a good king if I ignore everyone's opinions, can I? Uplifting 3 fingers, he proposed. So, taking all this into consideration, I propose to you a 3-pronged mediation. He offered. First, I grant you the title of duke, and hereby, Hastert and Grosslin agree to a lifelong contract with Cecilia Z. Saryen. Continuing, he said. In other words, until you die, Hastert is under contract to Grosslin. The salary and salary increase will be the same as in the contract with Ilid. Adding, secondly, Cecilia Z. Saryen, the Duke of Hastert, is hereby made responsible for Ethan Grosslin, and is jointly and severally liable as surety for all his legal activities. And thirdly, you are to marry Ethan Grosslin. Cecilia, hearing this, got astonished. In the lockup, Ethan reflected on his uncle and aunt, realizing, now that I think about it, it's strange that I didn't suspect my uncle first. He considered. Maybe it was because I had been brought up by my uncle and aunt from a young age. Alternatively, he pondered. Perhaps it was because I thought of them as my parents. Adding, he expressed, so I believed that they would find me, that they would be waiting for me. After a while, he faced the harsh reality, realizing. But the reality is, it was just another part of the plan of a man who had been trying to take the throne for a very long time. Recalling Cecilia's actions, he clarified. Cecilia wasn't locking me up, she was keeping me from dying. Remembering her care, he recalled. She gave me a meal to keep my stomach from rumbling and said, Eat slowly, Your Highness. Grateful, he acknowledged. She gave me a cozy place to sleep so I could get a good night's rest. Realizing his own mistakes, he admitted. I may be a fool, but in the end, I'll take it all in my stride. Recognizing Cecilia's kindness, he said, Even though we had nothing to do with each other, she saved me and let me live like a decent human being. He expressed his deep gratitude, saying, To me, all I ever had was you, Cecilia. Regretfully, he acknowledged. All the times I've doubted and betrayed Cecilia are stabbed deep into my heart. Disheartened, he confessed. I guess it's all over. Fearful of his fate, he thought. My uncle will kill me, cut my throat, or starve me. In the end, I will die. A wave of realization prompted him to say, Cecilia, I'm sorry, I'm going to die without being able to repay the favor you've done for me. Determined, he added, I will repay this favor even in death. I'll tell my parents and all my ancestors. Expressing his sorrow with a heavy heart and tearfully concluding, to give you their blessings. I'm so sorry. Meanwhile, a guard approached Ethan, stating, I am here to serve you, Your Highness. Ethan, taken aback, pondered. What? They've been treating me like I'm going to die for the last few days, and now they're going to serve me? Gathering his thoughts, he realized, the time has finally come. 2 guards escorted him somewhere, and as they walked behind him, Ethan determined, no matter what you do to me, I won't run away. I will never stand cowardly again, and I will never show weakness. He regretfully added, if there's one last thing I regret, it is the fact I never got the chance to apologize to Cecilia. The guards led him to a well-furnished bathroom, where a large bathtub was filled with water, surrounded by beautifully arranged towels, bathrobes, and bathing accessories. 2 female servants attended to his bath, and after the cleansing, they provided him with beautiful blue and white royal attire. Ethan, bewildered, wondered, what's going on here? Despite his expectations, everything was the opposite of what he thought. After the preparations, a servant lady in a long black dress guided him to another room in front of his uncle, announcing, His Highness is here. A reply came, All right, let him in. Ethan speculated, what the hell was my uncle thinking? Is he going to ask me what I want to say before I die? It doesn't matter. As far as he's concerned, I must be something that needs to disappear. He resolved, if I die, I will die with a treacherous look in my eyes. In the room, a girl elegantly dressed in a long pink frock with red hair turned towards him. It was Cecilia. Shocked, Ethan questioned, Why is Cecilia here? Cecilia calmly greeted, Your Highness, leaving Ethan in further bewilderment. His uncle announced, My nephew is here. Ethan, caught off guard, was unable to say anything, feeling disappointed in his shabby appearance. He thought, I look so shabby right now. I don't want to show my shabby self to Cecilia. His uncle inquired, How is it, nephew, seeing your fiancé? Ethan, astonished, muttered, Fiancé? King insisted. Ethan, when a king asks a question, a subject must answer. Ethan apologized. My apologies, Your Majesty. In his thoughts, Ethan contemplated, Yes, I will give you the position for now, but one day you will have to give the seat back to me. Ethan addressed the king. It would be a great honor to me if Saryan would become my wife. Respectfully, he asked, So by what name shall I greet her? The king chuckled, saying, Haha, you're so blunt. You were blunt when you were younger, and you still are. King inquired of Cecilia, Is he like that in Hastert? In Hastert, he was a good and kind man. The workers liked him very much. Ethan realized the king's intentions, thinking, I'm sure you're asking to see if I'll grow up to be the one to usurp the throne. Understanding Sylvie's role in defending him, he replied, Your Majesty, No, I wish to remain in Hastert and end my days as a useful human being in Hastert. Doubting, the king asked, Do you mean it? Ethan affirmed, That is my wish. The king joyfully declared, Then, I will bestow upon you, my nephew, the title of Archduke Ursias. You shall be loyal not only to Hastert but to the country and to me. Grateful, Ethan responded, Thank you, Your Majesty. The king suggested taking Ethan to Cecilia's manor to rest. Cecilia, holding Ethan's hand, agreed, Yes, sir. I will escort him, Your Grace. As she led him to the rest area, she asked, Are you all right? Suddenly, Ethan fell unconscious, and Cecilia, worried, urged, "Your Highness, please lean on me." As she tried to support him, Ethan hugged Cecilia and questioned, "Why did you do that? Why did you save me again? I'm not worth saving." "I promised," Cecilia responded, "to give you sword lessons." Realizing her goodness, Ethan expressed, "Cecilia, you're such a good person, more than anyone else in my life." Lost in his thoughts, he collapsed, and Cecilia screamed, "Your Highness!" In the latest episode, Ethan lost consciousness, collapsing before Cecilia. Lying in bed, he sensed a cool and pleasant feeling, gradually waking up. Cecilia, placing her hand on his head, politely suggested, "Please sleep some more." She added, "You're tired, so you should rest more." Cecilia, seated beside him, gently pressed his head. Ethan reflected. Cecilia's hands, they're cool and pleasant. Meanwhile, Sophia entered, expressing concern about Leon's potential anger over risking Hastert to save Ethan. Ethan was shocked at the thought of Cecilia putting down Hastert for him. Cecilia addressed Sophia, stating, "What I'm betting on is Hastert's contract, not all of Hastert." She firmly declared, "Even if you all leave Hastert, Hastert remains mine, because I am Hastert." Sophia immediately apologized, and Cecilia ordered him to leave. Ethan realized, "We got engaged by making a contract to save me." Concerned, Cecilia reassured him, saying, "Your Highness, it's okay." She added, "No one will take you lightly now, and no one will look down on you. So don't worry about it, and go to sleep, Your Highness." Cecilia lightly pressed his head, and he drifted to sleep, thinking, Cecilia, I'll be stronger. I'll protect you just as you were willing to save." After some time, Ethan woke up, and Sophia approached with a royal letter. Astonished, he asked Cecilia, "Are you saying this is all a list of Ethan's possessions?" He added, "As far as I know, since you've been knighted, it's a given that you're going to marry." He was very surprised, especially at the size of his estate. Cecilia provided an explanation, stating, "There's nothing you can say in front of His Highness." Sophia responded, "But, my lord, he'll have to get used to it. There are already countless invitations coming his way." Ethan, sitting on the bed, remained speechless. Sophia continued, "Besides, if the Archduke misbehaves, you'll be in danger too." He exclaimed, "Especially since you've been commissioned by the king to slay demons." Ethan thought, "As soon as Cecilia was betrothed to me, she was ordered to slay demons as the head of the Knights of Hastert, as if to confirm her submission. I was given the title of Urshias by Rafnal." He added, "Urshias, an ancient word meaning one who walks in the sun. The sun symbolizes the king, so I literally obey the king and never go against him." It was also meant as a warning not to think rashly. The reason for Sophia's astonishment at my property was its size. Half of what my father had left me had passed to Rafnal, as it was the property of the royal family. To me, the only child, my mother that is, inherited it due to the enormous wealth my father had left me. Counting his vast possessions, Ethan mentioned gold and mithril mines, vast farmlands, 4 castles, jewels, and extensive bonds and real estate. Cecilia, addressing the financial aspect, advised, "Anyway, I'll get you a good accountant. You'd better not trust people too much when it comes to money." Perplexed, Ethan asked, "Why?" Cecilia responded, "Because money has the power to change people. People don't change, but money changes people." Worried, Ethan agreed, saying, "Yeah, I'll be careful." Cecilia suggested, "And before I go, there's somewhere we should go together." Ethan, puzzled, asked, "Pardon?" They visited a shop adorned with royal dresses on display. Ethan inquired of Cecilia, "Where is this place?" She, donning an elegant gray coat with a black shirt and white pants, replied, "This is the renowned Larder costume shop in Jensen. We'll be fitting some of your highness's outfits here," explaining their purpose. A girl in a long yellow frock approached them, expressing excitement. It's been a long time, Your Excellency, the Duke. I thought you'd forgotten about Tracy. Cecilia, after a considerable absence, greeted her. Madame Larder, it's been a long time. Tracy responded. Oh, please call me Tracy. Ethan observed, thinking. I've been thinking about this for a while now, but Cecilia is popular with both men and women. Cecilia introduced Tracy to Ethan, saying, This is Archduke Ursius. Tracy, astonished, bowed her head and said, Your Highness Archduke. Cecilia whispered to Ethan, Highness, please tell her to raise. Ethan instructed. Raise, Larder. Cecilia expressed. Yes, Your Highness, and remarked, I'd like to see what His Highness will be wearing. Ethan thought, She's the exact opposite of Cecilia. Tracy asked. You mean socializing clothes, right? She continued. Please leave your clothing for socializing to me, Larder. Exhausted, Ethan lay on the sofa thinking. I'm so tired, as Tracy overwhelmed him with various clothes to try. Realizing he might have tried on all the clothes he'll ever wear, Ethan relaxed as Tracy turned her attention to Cecilia. He thought, I'm glad Larder's eyes have turned to Cecilia. While on the sofa, he wondered why Cecilia hadn't come out yet, and Tracy mentioned, Seeing you grow up after so long, I thought I'd be blinded by your beauty. Cecilia emerged from the trial room in a beautiful pink royal dress. Observing her, Ethan pondered, I wouldn't really care if someone else wore the dress. Why is it that when she wears it, it tickles my heart so much? Tracy exclaimed. His Majesty is mesmerized. She bowed and said, I see you have all your clothes ready to go. Then, Your Highness, farewell. And so, we parted ways for 2 long years. It was a bright sunny day, and Ethan sat by the window, deep in thought. 2 years had passed since Silly left to exterminate the demons. His teacher approached him, visibly upset with his academic performance. Exclaiming, he said, Your Highness, Archduke Ursius! Your Highness, you have shown unprecedented academic achievement. It's clear that you must now be admitted to the royal school. You'll do better than anyone else. Ethan replied, Indeed. But internally he was upset, thinking, I've been studying for 2.5 years now, determined to be strong. My teachers began to urge me to go to the royal school. He went to school daily in his uniform, realizing at 13 that he should have been admitted long ago. However, he felt conflicted, knowing it's an unavoidable part of his life as an archduke but not wanting to be separated from Cecilia. Concerned about Cecilia, he pondered. Is she doing fine now? Despite writing to her weekly, he received brief replies once or twice a month. Kissing her letters, he remembered her. Meanwhile, Rosemary, a 10-year-old maid in charge of Ethan, approached, asking if he had a headache. Thane, a 13-year-old servant, suggested fetching Dr. Orson for medicine. Ethan, holding his head, insisted. Don't make a fuss. Medicine, blood, whatever, it's a good indicator, but don't tell Cecilia. Rosemary offered to order hot soup and warmed wine, and Ethan agreed to the wine. Reflecting, he thought, Thane and Rosemary are here, and it bothers me that Cecilia is not around my age. As Rosemary left with his books, Thane thanked her, stating, This is the servant I brought with me. Ethan added, I don't like being treated like a child, but Cecilia gave them to me. Rosemary brought him a cup of hot wine, and Ethan, sitting on his head, drank it. As he sipped his wine, thoughts of Cecilia crossed his mind. A lady servant remarked, She used to love warmed wine too. Ethan reflected, Would have loved this warmed wine. While drinking, he pondered, I wonder if she's okay. I wonder if she's overdoing it. If something happened to her, I wouldn't be able to do anything. I want to be there for her. I want to be her strength. To do that, I need to gain everything, not just status and wealth. Placing the cup in the window, he observed the sunlight turning the wine bright red, thinking, For example, the king's seat. No, I must take it back. Concerned, Rosemary asked, Your Highness, are you all right? Ethan felt dizziness, becoming numb. Rosemary and Thane panicked, with Thane rushing to get Dr. Orson. Ethan, lost in his thoughts, recalled his deteriorating condition since he was kidnapped at a young age. My body has been slowly deteriorating since I was kidnapped, he reflected. By the time I was about a year old, my condition had deteriorated uncontrollably, and I finally broke down. Although I am now in somewhat better condition with extreme care. Dr. Orson attended to him as he became unconscious, noting the painful after effects. Ethan continued, Cecilia is on the battlefield as a paladin, and I can't support her, but I often spend a lot of time in bed. When I'm stretched out, my body and mind become weak, and I wish Cecilia was there when I woke up. Dreaming of Cecilia, he expressed. Cecilia, I want to see you. It's just the two of us now. Family is supposed to be together. I miss you, my dear Cecilia. On the other side, Cecilia was engaged in a battle with her enemies, shouting commands to her liege members. Don't miss a single one. Drive them to one place. Ethan, reflecting on the situation, thought, I don't know what the weather is like there. It's been a bit rough here lately. Haven't even made my social debut, and I'm still getting mountains of invitations. He continued, Some of them are from people who want to take my fortune away from me, as Cecilia says. There's a long line of them, including His Majesty, so I'm paying attention. My studies are going well, even if it is a little frustrating. I'm always nervous because I have no way of knowing how well I'm doing. There are no teachers out there to give me a hard time, so I just have to pull myself together. I'll wait for your reply. I love you. In a different scene, Cecilia was taking a bath in a bathtub and smoking when Leon entered. She informed him, I am taking a bath. Playfully, Leon covered his eyes, saying, Oh, you're blinding me. Yes, I know. Don't worry, you're so beautiful, I can't see because I'm dazzled. Cecilia asked for a letter that a lady servant held. Leon informed her about the day's battle report, stating they didn't miss a beat. He sought permission to check it, and Cecilia replied, Okay. Leon, curious about her alliance with the Archduke, asked, And why are you siding with the Archduke? Cecilia explained, As you all know, I have an inheritance problem. I did it to settle it, Leon suggested. Well, there was no need to put Hastert on the line, anyway. Cecilia, displeased, asked, So that's why you came to me at bath time? To keep me from running away. I needed the Archduke's support to stand up to my relatives who were disputing my inheritance and pretending that Hastert was theirs. Leon, frustrated, suggested, My lord, you're taking me for a fool. Someone within Hastert was appeased, right? Cecilia clarified. Leon, they didn't do anything wrong. It's just that they've had to learn to live in this world. Leon, angered, exclaimed, That doesn't change the fact that you betrayed him. The traitor must be caught in the first turn. Cecilia pondered. Who betrayed whom? Him? That might be a possibility. Strangely enough, I don't see myself in that position. Maybe it's because I've been living near death. Indulging in her thoughts, she continued, I always feel like I'm standing in a gray area. People make their positions clear and go with it. I always see myself half submerged and half not, in a place that is neither land nor water. As the Duke of Hastert, following in my father's footsteps, I am supposed to decide and be in charge of everything, so why am I doing this to myself? Cecilia ordered Leon, saying, Anyway, don't find and purge him. Do you understand me? Leon reluctantly agreed, and she concluded, And next month, this war will be over. Smiling confidently. Cecilia was currently in the midst of a war, riding on a horse and reflecting. It took less than a month to complete the slaying of the demons. I got lucky this time, finding the demon lair. Looks like we can rest easy for a while. Her liege members were transporting supplies when a servant rushed towards her, screaming, Your Excellency! His Highness the Archduke! His Highness the Archduke! The servant informed her that Ethan had fallen sick, prompting her immediate departure. Upon reaching Ethan's bedside, she questioned the doctor about when he started feeling unwell. The doctor, mentioning Ethan's weakness, replied that it began 3 weeks ago. Cecilia, furious, demanded more clarity, stating, "Before I left Jensen, he was perfectly healthy." The doctor casually mentioned the after effects of torture poison but assured her that he would soon recover, laughing off the severity of the situation. Ethan was calling Cecilia. "Cecilia! Cecilia!" She stood beside him, worried if something had happened to him. Rosemary asked Cecilia, "Your Grace, you've been traveling day and night. Why don't you have a cup of tea?" Cecilia replied, "Sure, can I have a glass?" While serving her tea, Rosemary informed her, "Your Grace, Dr. Orson is acting strangely." Cecilia asked, "What's wrong?" Rosemary explained, "His Highness has been ill for some time, but lately, he's been drawing blood for 4 days. While having tea, Cecilia inquired, "Why is he ill?" Thane replied, "I don't know, but he keeps saying it's because he's weak, mentioning torture poison." Rosemary added, "And then he gives me and Thane a gift and tells us not to tell His Highness because it's no big deal." On hearing this, Cecilia became furious. She thought, "What the hell has been going on in the 2 years I was gone?" "Well, the report said he'd been getting sick more often, but I didn't expect it to be this bad." Meanwhile, Sophia entered the room screaming, "My lord!" He whispered in her ear, saying, "According to Chris, Orson was gambling." Cecilia said, "Find out more about Orson now." He replied, "Yes, ma'am." Then, she instructed Thane and Rosemary, saying, "And Thane, Rosemary, go and fetch Johnton and His Highness's accountant." They both bowed their heads in front of her, saying, "Yes, ma'am." Cecilia added, "In the meantime, I must find out what has happened to His Highness." In an unconscious state, Ethan was lost in his intrusive thoughts, calling for Cecilia. "Cecilia! Cecilia, where are you?" Cecilia rushed to him and replied politely, "Your Highness." He didn't believe that Cecilia was in front of him, and asked again, "Cecilia! I miss you." He hugged her tightly, starting to cry. "Now let's never separate. Ever again. You're the only one for me, Cecilia. I love you so much, so stay by my side. Cecilia." He held her hand tightly, and Cecilia became happy that he's awake now. "Your Highness, are you finally awake?" Ethan asked. "Cecilia?" She replied, "Yes, Your Highness. It's been a while." Ethan started screaming, "So you've come back?" "Ugh." She stopped him, saying, "Your Highness is very weak at the moment." He realized, "That's right, I definitely felt dizzy, and then I was just like..." He said, "You saved my life again?" Cecilia told him, "It wasn't me, it was Ingrid, a mage famous for herbalism, who saved Your Highness. You've awoken." Ethan thought, "Does she know?" "I know. I'm happy to have Cecilia back as always." Ethan noticed a burning smell and asked her, "Why is there a smell of burning grass?" She pointed towards Ingrid burning something on the table. "Yes, Ingrid burned it," she added. "You'll have to keep drinking it for a while." Ethan asked her, "If she was taking care of me, what about Orson?" Cecilia said, "Orson has been taken to the Capitol Guard for now. I'm going to visit him tomorrow." Ethan tried to get up and asked, "The Capitol Guard? Why?" Cecilia stopped him, saying, "Don't push yourself, Your Highness." Cecilia asked Ethan, "Did you know that Orson was addicted to gambling?" He replied, "No. I was not aware of that at all." She replied, "He gambled away his fortune and was practicing without enough money to buy herbs. People who are addicted to gambling will do anything." She added, "People who are addicted to gambling will do anything. He was secretly selling Your Highness's blood as a liquid shield." Upon hearing this, Ethan was astonished. Ethan was profoundly shocked when Cecilia revealed that Dr. Orson was selling his blood as a liquid shield. Skeptical, he asked, "What did you say?" Overwhelmed, Ethan contemplating a life free from external control, began to sweat and thought. I thought I was done living life controlled by others. Tears streaming down his face, he started bleeding. Concerned, Cecilia approached him, addressing him as, Your Highness. Ethan's mouth was bleeding profusely, and he shouted, How dare they treat my blood as some sort of talisman, while I've been here struggling to just breathe? Overwhelmed with grief, he continued, How dare they? When I... In anguish, Cecilia embraced him tightly, assuring him that everything would be all right. Through tears, Ethan looked at Cecilia and found solace, thinking, Yes, at the moment I'll be fine. As long as you're here. As long as you stay here, just like this. He cried out. Cecilia! She politely responded. Yes, Your Highness? He confessed. I just wanted to say your name, squeezing her tightly in the embrace. The next morning, a girl in a royal green dress approached Cecilia with excitement, saying, Hey, Han! Cecilia, still in bed, asked, Ingrid, what brings you here so early? Cecilia was still on her bed. She replied, Back to bed after accompanying the young highness for breakfast? You're even staying here in his castle. Look at you being all caring and attentive. Cecilia asked her, Stop that, Inga. What did you really come here to say? Inga sat on Cecilia's bed and started saying, I found traces of Rostiology in His Highness's blood. He must have ingested trace amounts of it over a long period of time, enough for the poison to accumulate in him. Cecilia asked her, What kind of poison is it? She lay on her bed comfortably and began explaining to Cecilia. Well, it's a medicinal herb that can be quite good for you in small doses. But it can be a potent poison if used alone. It's not an easy plant to manage. To add to that, it's quite rare. There aren't many who would know of its existence unless they're an advanced herbologist. She continued, Or perhaps if they're a very capable physician. Cecilia asked her, How long do you suppose he's been ingesting it? In response, Inga pointed out her 4 fingers and said, About 4 months? I don't think that Orson guy is the guilty one, though. Cecilia was in shock. Huh? Cecilia's friend lay on her belly and explained. Rostiology lingers in the blood, so if he wanted to kill him, he wouldn't have drawn his blood. She explained. In this case, he actually helped His Highness survive by drawing his blood and taking the poison out. Proudly, she continued. Of course, in the end, I was the one who saved him with my skills. Cecilia responded. Then I shouldn't be interrogating Orson on why he poisoned His Highness but rather on who it was that bought his blood. Lost in thought, Cecilia proceeded with Leon, her assistant for the day. Leon asked, My liege, must you always make me accompany you when you visit the Yensun guards? Cecilia replied, Yes, walking behind him, thinking. It's crucial that Leon comes with me whenever I visit this place because Leon is the captain of the guards, the big shot in complete control of the security of the capital, me aptly nicknamed the Cunning Bear. As they headed towards the guard visit, someone called out to Leon. Leon! Leon! My darling baby brother! It was Leon's eldest brother, who doted on him. They hugged tightly, and Leon, with tears, exclaimed, It's been so long! Why do you never come see us? His brother replied, Yes, brother, long time no see. Leon held his brother's cheeks and said, Have you been eating? Is the food at Hearthtread not good enough? Is somebody bullying you? He added, My grace! Look at him! He's lost weight! Cecilia observed them, and when his brother mentioned Leon's appearance, she thought, has he? His brother continued, Just look at this sunken face of his. How much? Leon, furious, covered his face and screamed, Shut it! We're here to talk to that physician you locked up. His brother asked. Physician? Leon stated. The crazy bastard who dared to draw and sell the Grand Dukes. The other person replied. Oh, yes, him! Of course, I can arrange a meeting if that's what you want. Laughing, he continued. But what's the reason? Cecilia thought. He's aiming this question at me. Leon called his brother. Brother. Leon's brother responded. Yes, my dear baby brother? Irritated, Leon screamed with rage. Must I handle every little formality? Can't you take care of such trivial matters? His brother reassured. Of course I can. Your big brother will take care of everything, Leon insisted. I'd like to get this over with so I can go and get some sleep. Bring him to us now. His brother enthusiastically ran off, saying, You can rely on me, baby brother. Leon, annoyed, remarked, As always, his affection for you is quite touching. Cecilia laughed and commented, Don't let him fool you, my liege. He isn't called the cunning bear for nothing. He may act a fool around me, but around others, every word he utters carries weight. Leon explained to Cecilia. He'll change his demeanor entirely if he finds it necessary. Cecilia observed Leon's seemingly cold attitude toward his brother and asked, Why are you so cold towards him? You know he only acts that way toward you because he loves you. Leon replied, Love isn't everything, my liege. Leon expressed, I'm a 36-year-old man, yet he treats me like a baby, even in your presence. How could you possibly call that love? Cecilia, understanding his coldness towards his brother, thought, Is that how it is? She reminded him, Everyone has their own reason. As soon as I was knighted holy swordsman, father prepared to have me inherit the order of knights. She added, I was made Grand Master of Hearthshred at a very young age. But it wasn't a joyous occasion for my uncles. One of them slapped me across the face with a glove, demanding a duel, though I was a good 15 years younger than him. Grieving, she thought, Nobody's ever babied me. I guess I'll never know how he feels. Upon learning about Dr. Orson's intentions towards Ethan, she brought him in front of herself to teach him a lesson. Orson was thrown at Cecilia's feet. Cecilia exclaimed, You're finally here. It's been a while, Orson. I believe we have a few things to discuss, don't we? Leon attacked Dr. Orson in response to the sale of Ethan's blood. Orson screamed. His Grace took the gold mines from George. Furious, Leon yelled. George? That George? You mean he's the one who bought all the blood you sold? Orson replied. Yes. Leon grabbed his collar, blood staining his clothes. Orson explained. It was a few months ago. We made a bet among those of us in high society on whether your Grace would succeed or fail in eradicating all the monsters. Fergie, another royal figure, desired Ethan's wealth. Jorga staked his gold mines, and his Grace half his inheritance. Orson continued. Both Leon and Cecilia were astonished. Orson further explained. But your Grace returned, having distinguished yourself in battle. So George, having lost a fortune, wanted to take revenge on his Grace. Cecilia recalled what her biologist friend had told her. You should take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. I'm an herbologist, and this is only my opinion after all. But His Highness has a deep-seated wrath, a truly disturbing one. She added, I'm not saying Orson did a good job identifying the problem, but he was right about His Highness's past and his pent-up feelings about it causing unhealthy amounts of magical power to rise in him. Cecilia emphasized. And you know this already, Cecilia. Magic only grows stronger with time. At his age, his magic should still remain condensed, but it's already beginning to expand. Cecilia asked. He is not draining his life force and transforming it into magic, is he? The reply came. Luckily no. Suggesting treatment for Ethan's illness, she stated. Of course, the best remedy for his ailment is to dissolve his anger before he ultimately kills himself. Expressing more concern, she added, but a deep-seated anger like his isn't something that can be dissolved by force, unless some fateful opportunity arises. He must live, learn, and grow to overcome that resentment himself. Just take care he doesn't get involved in anything drastic. Cecilia thought, what if he's become a compulsive gambler from all the pain while I was gone? Leon, standing behind her, remarked, well, that was unexpected. Do you think he's become a gambler? Cecilia replied uncertainly. I don't know. Recalling a conversation between Ethan and his accountant a few days back, a man in a purple shirt, dark brown jacket, and white tie arrived in the room. He said to Ethan, "It just won't do to enlarge your fortune through gambling. For one, it is not dignified." Rissel, Ethan's accountant, thought. Dignified, then continued. Secondly, a life with a fortune gathered through gambling will not end well. So many will begrudge and resent you. It's just not advisable. Describing further, he added, it's also why so few nobility will dabble in gambling as anything more than simple entertainment. The more power you have, the more resentment you cause others to harbor, just as was the case in that huge gambling circle you participated in a few months ago. Ethan got curious and asked, is that so? Rissel replied. Why do you think the late Duke Hearthtread was cursed? Realizing he didn't need to share this information, Ethan felt offended. He started explaining. I mean, was it a painful death? Rissel said. From what I heard, he passed in his sleep peacefully. An intrusive thought crossed Ethan's mind. So Cecilia lost her only family to another. I remember the pain and grief I felt when I found out my parents had passed. Cecilia is alone. Just like me. He added, she has her enemies. Just like me. We're alike yet different. Ethan pondered. How nice would it be if we could stand together? If I could just be by her side? While sitting at a dining table with vegetables and meat in his plate, Ethan thought. It's been several days since Cecilia visited after she said she was going to talk to Orson. She hasn't even come by for meals. He asked Thane standing beside him. Thane, is there any correspondence from Cecilia today? Thane replied. No, sir. However, Ethan became concerned and turned towards Thane, asking again. Thane explained. Her Grace discovered that George placed bets on the success of her campaign, and it seems she's confronted him about it. Ethan was shocked. What? Then Cecilia must have found out that I also took part in that bet. Is that why she hasn't come back? Worried, he thought. Because I made a bet on her fate? Because I made light of her life? He started crying. What if she hates me now? If she tells me she despises me now? Ethan placed his hand on the table and stood up, declaring, No, I must explain myself. I must tell her my side of the story. At once! He started screaming. Prepare the horses. Your Highness? Rosemary exclaimed. But it's cold outside. Please, at least take the coach. Ethan insisted. No need. I'll ride out right away. Rosemary pleaded. But, Your Highness! Thane cautioned him. The Yensun branch of Hearthtread is at the palace at the moment. Rosemary screamed. Thane! Ethan asked. Why are they at the palace? Thane explained. Because, at the moment, Hearthtread belongs to His Majesty. Ethan turned and started moving. Thane shouted behind him. Your Highness! We're nearing A4 Alley. It's the most dangerous area in the slums. Ethan, riding his horse, declared. I don't care. I need to see Cecilia at once. Thane chased after him, and they arrived at a very old place. A person with a child was standing there, wearing simple clothes. Ethan saw them and got shocked, saying, But what is all this? Meanwhile, someone hit Ethan with a rock, and blood started dripping from his head. Thane screamed, Your Highness! In the recent episode, someone hit Ethan with a rock, causing his head to start bleeding. As Thane saw him, he screamed, Your Highness! Boarding him on the horse, Thane urged, Your Highness, we need to keep moving. The longer we stay, the more danger we'll be in. Despite the blood dripping from his head, Ethan kept moving. They reached the castle, and Thane began cleaning the blood from his head. As they entered, Cecilia saw him and exclaimed, Your Highness! Ethan, responding, said, Cecilia. Cecilia became worried and rushed towards him, asking, What happened, Your Highness? She took a napkin from Thane's hand and started dabbing at his head. Thane explained. We went through Afer Alley. Cecilia asked. Afer? That was a risky thing to do. Ethan apologized. I'm sorry. I had to. But Cecilia, over there. Ethan proceeded to share all the scenarios that happened in Afer Alley, people sleeping out in the open without a roof or a door for cover, the harrowing stench filling the streets, the tattered clothes hanging overhead, rows upon rows. When he arrived there, he thought, do the poor not deserve even the warmth of blue skies? I couldn't even speak. Cecilia said to him, I understand, but first, we need to take care of your wound, come this way. With one hand, she was tending to his wound and holding his hand with the other. They started moving towards the room, where a doctor dressed Ethan's wound. He expressed, I've been through a lot, but that place was unlike anything I've ever seen. Adding, I heard nobody would blink an eye nor offer help even if the person right beside them were to die. That's why that place has been forsaken. Reflecting on the despair in that place, he thought, is their life so full of despair that they do not care whether they live or die? Ethan emphasized, with such a poor area in the middle of the capital, are we supposed to go on as if nothing is wrong? You're the king, uncle. What have you been doing? They need someone that can save them, just as Cecilia saved me. Ethan was sitting in bed with Cecilia. She asked him, Your Highness, what made you ride through that alley in the first place? Ethan motioned to speak privately, saying, Cecilia, I'd like to speak to you alone. This is a conversation that needs to be just between us. Cecilia nodded to Leon, signaling him to leave the room. Ethan started telling her about the bet he made with George. I had no intention of betting on your life as mere sport. They had the audacity to claim it a sure thing you'd end up dead, that no fool would ever bet on you. Regretting his decision, Ethan began crying. That's all. I would never treat you as some entertainment. Cecilia held her face and said, Your Highness, hugging him. Who else would do this for me? I've had plenty of supporters in my life, yes. She pointed towards her liege members. But would any of them risk everything they had and even speak up for me in front of so many like that? Cecilia continued, Not even my own father would. Reflecting on her past life in that Colosseum where the sky was cloudless and blue, she became emotional. Ethan concernedly asked, Cecilia, are you okay? She wiped her tears with her hand and replied, Your Highness, thank you. Overwhelmed by someone's genuine worry for her, Cecilia added, Sitting here like this, I can see just how tall you've grown. You're nearly as tall as I am now. Ethan, somewhat surprised, said, Huh! Oh, right. Cecilia mentioned, While I stayed at your castle, Rosemary would brew me various flower teas. I loved them so much I ended up getting a variety of them for myself. Would you like a cup? Ethan agreed. Yes, that sounds great. They drank tea together. Leon arrived and said, Phew, he's finally gone. That was a surprise. Cecilia reassured, All right, we're good now. Leon moved towards George, who, upon seeing Leon, asked, Leon? In response, Leon kicked him and exclaimed, We almost got caught. All because of this idiot. George. Leon kidnapped him, covering his mouth with a piece of cloth. George cried when Leon kicked him. Cecilia, standing beside Leon, said, Let's get back to where we were before our precious guest dropped in, shall we? Leon, grabbing him by the hair, removed the piece of cloth from George's mouth. Cecilia sternly questioned, You tried to profit from the noble blood of my own fiancé, the Grand Duke. Do you admit to this? Vice Captain Leon, pointing a sword towards George's neck, exclaimed, You know just how loyal I've been to the Lawson family. Leon, visibly irritated, interrupted George's defense, screaming, Do you actually think talking about my family will help matters here? Cecilia reiterated, Let me repeat myself. She continued, You tried to purchase the blood of a very noble personage. Orson claimed you were blinded by vengefulness, but I don't believe that. Not for a minute. You're a merchant. You wouldn't take revenge on anyone unless there was money in it for you. So why don't you tell me who it was that wanted to buy his blood? George, overwhelmed, continued crying. After kidnapping George, Cecilia sternly inquired. So why don't you tell me who it was that wanted to buy his blood? George, with a taunting smile, provocatively said, Oh, don't tell me you're not aware of who's the most desperate in need of his blood in this whole kingdom. He screamed. You've already pledged to live as the loyal bloodhound of the mighty sun, and you think you can get away with. George continued. I was informed you planned to sell his blood as some ward against bad luck. Begging desperately, he added, I was obviously lying. I could hardly say the king wanted it. Cecilia questioned. Then what about the Rosteology? George replied. Rosteology? You mean that poisonous plant wizards sometimes buy? What about it? Cecilia thought. He has nothing more to hide, yet it's clear he doesn't understand why I brought that up. The poison couldn't have had anything to do with him, she concluded. George wanted to take revenge on his perhaps Orson was right about one thing, at least. George, now on his knees with hands tied, begged. I've told you everything there is to tell. You can let me go now, right? Leon stepped forward, holding a sword in his hand, and declared, Do you know how much in losses I'm incurring by being kept here? Cecilia, with a sarcastic tone, remarked, Ah, how terrible for you. George was puzzled, and Cecilia ordered Leon, Go. Leon executed him with his sword, and Cecilia stated, Find the source of all this so we can eradicate it, whether it be monster or human. The sudden disappearance of Hesint George became the talk of Yensun. Upon hearing of George's death, Orson confessed everything to the Yensun guards, down to the very last detail. Even though Leon forced the entire report from his big brother, Grig, there was no mention of the Rosteology plant in it at all. Meanwhile, Ethan and Cecilia were drinking tea together, and there was a sunflower in Ethan's cup. While sewing the flower, he said, This flower reminds me of you. Cecilia replied, I'm flattered. However, Ethan, irritated, screamed, You're a human being, and this flower is a mere plant. It was the highest form of compliment it could have gotten. Cecilia thought, How over the top, and added, Listening to him speak like this makes me want to run in the other direction. Cecilia enjoyed her tea, and a servant interrupted, saying, Your Highness. Apologizing for the disturbance, the servant delivered a message about a guest. Cecilia, tapping her hand on the table, said, Victoria must be here. Ethan asked. Victoria? Cecilia offered. Why don't you come with me? She grabbed his hand and continued, Once you become a student at the Royal Academy, they'll teach you everything about this. But let me give you a brief introduction. She added, Different types of wizards. There are 5 kinds of wizards: the wizard scholar, who focuses on research; the defense wizard, who specializes in using magic circles to prepare for attacks; the attack wizard, who maximizes the use of magical weapons; the sorcerer, who expels curses born from charms and incantations. Finally, there's the healer, who heals people through magic. Unlike physicians, they have magic, but other abilities are needed to become a healer, and it's said they come to realize their power on their own. As they leave, holding hands, Ethan expresses concern about being born into a predetermined role like a sorcerer or healer. Cecilia looks at him and asks, What's there not to like? Ethan wants the freedom to choose his own path, challenging fate even if he was born with healing or sorcery abilities. Cecilia admires his resolute nature and reflects on his noble innocence. She thinks about how he risked half his fortune and future for her sake. As they discuss, a person in black attire enters and remarks, Challenge fate, will you, Your Highness? Perhaps you only think so because you are not a healer yet. The girl introduces herself, saying, At your service, Your Highness, Your Grace. I am Victoria Salyazo. Cecilia held her shoulders and said, Victoria Z. Salyazo, great wizard healer. You're here, Vicky. I was waiting for you. She replied. It's good to see you, Cecilia. Ethan approached her and said, "Victoria Saluzzo." She replied, "Yes, Your Highness." He asked her, "So what is so good about being a healer?" She replied, "Well, the money, the honor, and above all else, freedom from any interference." Freedom. Upon this statement, Ethan said, "I suppose it wouldn't be bad being a healer if that was the only way to possess those three things." Now he moved to Cecilia and said, "But Cecilia, you may do just as you please." Confused, she asked, "Pardon?" Ethan moved his hand forward and said, "Money, honor, freedom. I will procure enough of that for the two of us." He said this while smiling. "Enough that you will be able to do whatever you want. I'll give it all to you." Cecilia was shocked, sweating with fear. Here's a brief introduction to Victoria Saluzzo. Victoria Saluzzo, who appeared to be an old friend of Cecilia's, was an odd person. It rained non-stop in Istrum since her arrival. She kept her whereabouts as hidden as her face, which she covered at all times. After several days, I couldn't repress my curiosity any longer. Ethan was drinking tea with Cecilia. He asked her, "Cecilia, you said Victoria was here for my healing?" She replied, "Yes, I did," he said. "But she's been here almost a week now. Is she even alive?" Cecilia explained, "Vicky is in the woods. She's staying at the groundkeeper's cottage." Ethan asked, "In the woods? Why?" Cecilia said, "She's not one to enjoy other people's company." Ethan was astonished a little bit and said, "Cecilia, about your friend." She replied, "She is rather odd, isn't she?" Cecilia explained, "She's a good person, though she may appear strange at first. She has her reasons, though she hardly likes to explain. Everybody has secrets about themselves or some part of their past." She continued, "I heard Sophia paid you a visit recently." Ethan replied, "Ah, yes, she did." Cecilia told him. Some time ago, Cecilia made her first request that I take Paul, Sophia's firstborn son, as my valet. Ethan thought, as Cecilia had already chosen Thane and Rosemary for me, I didn't think of it as any big favor. However, Cecilia looked troubled. He was wearing a sky blue royal dress and having a meal with Cecilia. He said, "I had my misgivings about this child, Paul, who Cecilia went as far as making a formal request just for me to take him in." He added, "But it being the first time she asked me such a thing and Paul being the firstborn of Sophia, my first tutor, I accepted." Sophia paid a visit to express her gratitude afterward, which was certainly a sight to behold. Ethan, sitting on his chair, said to Cecilia in front of him, "I'd much rather talk about you, Cecilia, than about Polly." Cecilia asked. "Polly?" Ethan said. "From what I hear, you're quite the gardener. There's a greenhouse over at the Saryen Castle, is there not?" "I went there once, but I had no idea you were the one taking care of the plants." Cecilia replied, "It's just a hobby. I don't do much. The gardeners do most of the work." Ethan asked, "Do you also have a garden at your Yensun townhouse?" She replied, "Yes, gardening became a hobby of mine after I did so much of it at Hearthtread." Ethan continued asking, "Why did you do so much of it there?" Cecilia placed her cup of tea on the table and said, "My mother had never been healthy." She explained, "The greenhouse consisted mostly of medicinal herbs for her. Even after my mother passed, Father kept the greenhouse." She added, "I had my fair share of health potions growing up, thanks to that." Ethan got more curious and asked, "The greenhouse work then, is it in memory of your mother?" She explained, "Well, it's become something of a habit of mine." Reminding Ethan about killing George, she said, "Killing is what my job mostly comprises of, whether it be of monsters or not." Speaking to Ethan, she added, "So sometimes it gives me pleasure to keep something alive." Hobbies can give you a different experience than what you're used to. On hearing about her hobbies, Ethan thought, maybe I was too rash in asking. She didn't look like she wanted to talk about it. But she never tells me anything unless I probe, even though I'm so curious to learn more about her. He added, I want you to be free to do whatever you please. I wasn't lying when I said that. I guess I'm not that dependable yet. If only I were all grown up. If I were grown and a king, I'd be a finer, much more suitable partner for Cecilia. I'd be someone she could be proud of, more than anybody else. Ethan was saying to himself, Cecilia, I will make it so that you never have to do anything you don't want. I will make it so that whenever you smile, it will be out of true happiness. He added, It may be raining now, but I promise you clear skies someday. Ethan was studying in the study room when Paul entered, calling loudly, Your Highness. Paul whispered in his ear, Are you participating in the hunting games this season? I'm very good with dogs. If you are, please consider taking me. Paul laughed as he said this. Ethan's teacher approached and reprimanded Paul, saying, Paul, running that mouth of yours again? You're always getting in the way of His Grace's studies, do you realize that? Isn't it enough that you're behind in your own studies? Holding a stick, the teacher turned and said, We might as well take a small break now. Paul, holding a book, sat on the sofa with Ethan, saying, Whoops, sorry, I'm all right. A servant brought some cookies on a tray, saying, I brought some snacks. Sweets will help you concentrate. These cookies are popular among commoners. They may not be to your taste, but I hope you like them. Ethan thought, Paul is definitely not as intelligent or tactful as Thane or Rosemary. While taking a bite of the cookie, he continued thinking, And I understand why Cecilia seemed so uncertain when she made her request, but that doesn't justify the way Avid treats Paul. Suddenly, while taking a bite, half of the cookie fell, and blood started dripping from Ethan's mouth. Rosemary and Thane were shocked, and Rosemary screamed, Your Highness!